Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's talk about corporate culture. It's a topic that's so often filled with these feel good posters and promises that don't really mean anything. But what if the secret to a great culture isn't about these big, grand values at all? What if it's about helping your team solve the small but really difficult choices they face every single day? Today, we're going to break down 6 super practical guidelines to build a culture that actually works. We've all heard this famous line from Peter Drucker, right? But let's be real for a second. What does it actually mean? Why is it that so many companies with the best of intentions end up with these walls covered in values that have basically zero impact on how people do their jobs day to day? That's the huge disconnect we're going to dig into today. Okay, so to really get into this, let's kick things off with a story. It's a story that, honestly, perfectly captures the whole problem with how we usually think about corporate values. So, the source we're looking at today starts with a story that's, well, it's almost hard to believe. Picture this. There's this software company called HBOC. Their HR department is busy taping posters all over the cafeteria walls with the company's big values: transparency, respect, integrity, honesty. Sounds great, right? Well, the very next year, the company's management was indicted for massive fraud. I mean, you can't get more disconnected than that. This is the ultimate example of the massive gap between posting nice-sounding words and building a culture that actually guides how people behave. So it's pretty clear that these big, abstract values aren't cutting it. So what's the alternative? See, the real problem with a value like integrity is that its opposite is just absurd. I mean, what's the alternative? Corruption? No company is ever going to put up a poster that says, "We value corruption." These statements are totally useless because they don't help employees navigate the genuinely difficult choices they have to make every single day. Okay, so what does work? Well, instead of these big, fluffy ideas, the source argues that a great culture is built by giving people clear, practical guidance on how to solve real-world dilemmas, those tricky spots where the right answer just isn't obvious. And this right here is the absolute key to everything. A true dilemma isn't a choice between good and evil or right and wrong. It's a choice between two good things, two totally valid, completely defensible options. Let's look at a perfect real-world example of this. Okay, so imagine you're a manager. You just found out about a potential reorg. It's maybe 60% likely to happen in a few months, and it would definitely affect your team. So what do? Do you tell them now? On one hand, you could lean toward team stability. Why cause a bunch of panic and distract everyone from their work when it might not even happen? Let's just keep everyone focused. But then, on the other hand, you could lean toward transparency. Treat your team like adults who can handle the truth. It builds trust for the long haul. See? Both are completely reasonable positions. And check this out. When they gave this exact scenario to hundreds of managers, the results were fascinating. They were split almost right down the middle. 55% said they'd keep quiet. 45% said they'd share the info. This is absolute proof that it's a genuine dilemma. And without any clear cultural guidance, the decision is just left up to a manager's personality, not the company's shared culture. And this all leads us straight to our first 2 big guidelines. First, you've got to build your culture around these real-world dilemmas. You have to explicitly say, hey, when we face this choice, we turn this way. And second, if you already have values in place, you need to dilemma test them. See if they actually help an employee solve a tough problem like the one we just talked about. Think about it. These vague, well-meaning statements just fall apart under pressure. A value like, we care. What does that even mean here? Does caring mean protecting your team from stress, or does it mean being honest with them? The value is useless. These abstract ideas just crumble when they're faced with a tough, real-world decision. Now, compare that to this value from Amazon. It is specifically designed to solve a classic stomach-turning dilemma. Your boss is about to make a call that you are sure is a mistake. So what do? Well, this value gives you a direct 2-part answer. Part 1, have a backbone. That means speak up, make your case, argue your point. Part 2, disagree and commit. This means once the final decision is made, you get behind it 100%, no passive aggression, no I told you so. It's clear, it's actionable, and it passes that dilemma test with flying colors. All right, so we've got dilemma testing down. Let's move on to the next couple of guidelines, which are all about making your culture memorable. And this is a big one, hiring the right people to actually live it out. Guideline number 3 is all about making your values stick. It turns out our brains are just wired to remember pictures Way, way better than we remember abstract words. It's a real thing called the picture superiority effect. I mean, think about it. If I say the word justice, and then I say the word pineapple, which one instantly creates a clear picture in your head? It's the pineapple, every single time. And this illustrates the difference perfectly. Amazon could just say, "We value small teams." Okay, fine. But instead, they have the two-pizza rule. If you can't feed a team with 2 pizzas, the team is too big. That image is unforgettable. Airbnb could say, "We practice transparency." Boring. Instead, they tell their leaders to address the elephants, dead fish, and vomit. That's the big obvious problem no one's talking about. The issue from the past that's starting to stink, and the stuff people just need to vent and get off their chest. I mean, come on. Which version are you actually going to remember and act on? And then there's Netflix. They take this idea even further, using these really edgy, almost jarring statements. Adequate performance gets a generous severance package is a pretty shocking way of saying, look, we expect top performance, and if you're just okay, we will pay you handsomely to go be okay somewhere else. And look at that second one. The easy way to say that is do what's right, but by framing it as don't seek to please your boss, they force you to stop and think, and they give employees permission to put the company's best interests ahead of any internal politics. So this brings us to a really critical point. Culture isn't just some abstract thing floating in the air. It's lived and breathed by the people in your company. And that makes who you hire and who you fire the most powerful culture-building tools you possibly have. It's like they say in computer science, garbage in, garbage out. Patagonia's hiring philosophy is the perfect example of using culture to solve a dilemma. So here's the choice for them. Do you hire the candidate with the perfect MBA and flawless resume? Or do you hire the person who lives and breathes your company's mission, the outdoorsy, environmentalist stuff? Their answer is crystal clear. They will take a risk on a rock climber over a standard MBA because they hire for cultural fit above all else. This leads us to what might just be the toughest cultural test there is, what the source calls the Bernard Dilemma. And we've all worked with a Bernard, right? That person who is an absolute rock star at their job, brilliant, innovative, maybe even brings in the most sales. But they're also just a nightmare to work with. They're arrogant, they're dismissive, and they just poison the team's morale. So the question is, what do you do with Bernard? Well, companies with really strong cultures, they don't dodge this dilemma. They answer it head on. Shopify's CEO has this famous line he tells his employees, "Shopify is a team, not a family." Now, that might sound cold at first, but the message is super clear. On a professional sports team, if someone isn't performing, you trade them. It's not personal. And Netflix is even more blunt with its famous no brilliant jerks rule. For them, the math is simple. The damage a toxic person does to the team is always greater than any individual contribution they make. Period. Okay, we're on the home stretch. Let's get to our final 2 guidelines. Your culture absolutely has to be tied directly to your business goals. And, just as important, you have to know its limits. No value, no matter how good, can be applied 100% of the time. So guideline number 5 is all about making sure your culture is actually a tool that helps you win. It's not just about being a nice place to work. And guideline number 6, this one is so important. It's about being realistic and knowing when to break your own rules. HubSpot is a fantastic example for guideline 5. Their entire business strategy depends on staying on the bleeding edge of the fast-changing world of digital marketing. So what kind of culture do they need? Well, one that values lifelong learners and adaptability. It's a direct line from business strategy to cultural value. And this gives them a really clear hiring filter. When they meet a super talented person who just wants a stable, predictable 9-to-5, their culture tells them the answer. It's not a fit. And for our last guideline, this story from Netflix is just brilliant because it adds that necessary dose of realism. We know transparency is a core value for them. In fact, the CEO wanted to make all employees' salaries public within the company. But the managers pushed back hard. Over 80% of them argued that it was a huge violation of individual privacy. And so in this battle between the value of transparency and the value of privacy, privacy won. It's a crucial reminder that even the strongest values have their limits. So when you boil it all down, what is culture? It's really just the personality of your organization. It's not about these abstract ideals on a poster. It's about the tough choices you decide to make, the dilemmas you consistently resolve in one direction, and the behaviors that your leaders model day in and day out. So the ultimate takeaway here is this. Go look at your own company's values and put them on trial. Don't just ask if they sound nice or inspiring. Ask the tough question. What does this value actually tell an employee to do when they're facing a really hard choice between 2 good options? If it doesn't give them a clear, actionable answer, then you don't really have a working culture. You just have a poster on the wall.